Greetings 205 students. This short video is going to help you look at how to annotate or take notes on an academic journal article. Academic journal articles are articles that are written by scholars who spend years sometimes researching a topic or an idea. Academic articles, or also called scholarly articles, are articles that I'm going to require an inquiry to. I wanted to make a quick video to demonstrate how I annotate or take notes on academic articles. As you can see on the screen, I am using the reading from this week, Susan Lee Foster's Choreographies of Protest. I am only going to show you the first 3 pages of my annotations on her article, but it's supposed to help you understand what to be looking for and how to focus in on her ideas and not get bogged down in kind of the jargon or the lengthiness of it. So, most academic articles are just really extended 5-paragraph essays. There's a thesis up front, there's some kind of hook, they give you an outline or sometimes a roadmap of what's going to be discussed, and then they get into their examples. More times than not, there are 3 examples, just like in some of the 5-paragraph essay structures you might have worked with in the past. Here, as you can see on the screen, you have the title, the author's name, a quick quote that the author uses to ground ideas that she wants to engage with overall. So you notice that the author of the quote, Bayard Rustin, is listed, and then you can kind of read through the quote. For me, I highlighted anything in this paper that I wanted to draw my eye back to when I read it a second or a third time. So even though the quote says, "For protest to succeed, it must produce a feeling of moving ahead. It must force people to take notice of injustice, and it must win new allies." I highlighted the quote, "feeling of moving ahead," because to me that centered on pathos, that feeling of moving ahead. You didn't even have to actually be making progress, but just the feeling of making progress. And this was my way of directing my attention back to something that I noticed and about how she, meaning Foster, structured the work. Again, when you're doing annotations for something long and lengthy like an academic journal article, you want to create a balance between what are they saying, make sure you understand what their argument is without your judgment, and separate that from your reactions and your opinions. You are allowed to have reactions and opinions to the article. You do not have to like it, you do not have to agree with it. However, you need to understand where their ideas start and where your reactions start. So, to go through again, I'm just going to scroll through a little bit of the first page. Here you can see on the first page the first paragraph of her article, the start of a second paragraph, and then down here is her bio. She is a professor of dance at UCLA. She's very well known. Here you can kind of see that this is an older text. She's referencing her past work. This was published, I believe, in 2003, so it's a bit dated, although I think her argument stands up well today. If you're looking at the first paragraph here, you can see that I have both blue highlights as well as green written words. You may have in the past learned different ways of annotating with different symbols. These are my symbols. You feel free to use them or to take an approach of your own. I use, again, the blue highlighting marker to draw my eye back to different parts that I think are main ideas, right? Physical intervention, sit-ins, walk-ins, pray-ins, envisioning the body. I want to argue this. That's drawing my eye back to them. The green pin complements these blue highlights because here I'm telling myself what to think of them. So when I do physical intervention, I do square boxes around terms that I think are going to be used again and again or that are defined, and I put definition on the side. Here, on the second part of the paragraph, you start to notice I statements. In this essay, I, right? At the same time, I want. Down here at the end, I want to argue. So here, what she is doing is creating I say statements or her thesis statements. These are her opinions about the topic that she's going to discuss, which here is protest. So I tell myself with a T for thesis, where thesis ideas show up. In scholarly articles that are, 18, 19 pages long, you'll notice that they don't always have a one-sentence thesis. They usually have thesis paragraphs and restated thesis sentences throughout the argument. This is to help kind of clarify their opinions as well as keep their reader focused on their argument. For your paper, I'm looking for a one-sentence thesis because it is not a long paper. So, coming back to her work, I see here that these are parts of her topic: physical intervention in terms of protest, symbolic public acts, varieties of invention, and then I get to her thesis. She's interested in troubling, or that's a nice word of saying arguing against, an idea that Gene Sharp, who she references at the very first sentence, makes between symbolic action and physical intervention. You don't necessarily need to understand those terms super well, but you do need to understand that by using the word "I want to trouble" here, that phrase, she's saying I'm going to argue against what someone's saying. And at the same time down here, I want to celebrate Sharp's contention. Let's use. So she is sitting in the middle of this particular person's argument. So Gene Sharp is who she's reacting to, and she both disagrees and agrees with Sharp. And by the end, she gives you what she wants her claim or her thesis to be. I want to argue that this physical interference makes a crucial difference. Approaching the body as articulate matter, I hope to demonstrate the central role that physicality plays in constructing both individual agency and sociality. Again, you are not the audience for this. Other scholars who study choreography, dance, protest are the intended audience. Nonetheless, you can figure out generally what she's arguing for. Approaching body as articulate matter might mean that she takes seriously that bodies produce arguments, as opposed to what Sharp wants to do. He wants to say that bodies are more symbolic, right? Meaning that they have an outside meaning, but they are not meaningful in and of themselves. And she believes that they play a central role, that they're very important in constructing agency. Agency meaning the ability to make action happen. So, this is just a quick way of showing how you could spend 5 minutes on one paragraph in here to ground yourself in her thesis. Do you have to do this with every paragraph? No. It will take you a couple of hours to get through the whole essay. Nonetheless, I want you to see how you are able to make sure you understand her main ideas before you move on. So, here we have the start of the second paragraph. We get past her bio, which you can look over. You also start to see footnotes. The footnotes are where her works cited information is. Some academic articles or research formatted articles use footnotes, some use endnotes, and some just have works cited pages. So this is where you would see, for example, research. If any of the research you think she's talking about works for your argument inquiry too, feel free to look up her research. That's what it's there for. So, as we go through, you see again that I've highlighted with blue highlight marker things that I think stick out to me. And I kind of make notes on the side to help remind me what's going on. So, for instance, in this paragraph that's titled "This Essay Reconstructs," I want you to see that I go through on the side with a green pen and create a mini outline of what's said in here. She's basically going to go through 3 different examples: lunch counter sit-ins from the 1960s, die-ins from the 1980s AIDS crisis, and the WTO protests in Seattle in 1999. I don't necessarily need to understand every single thing that she's saying in here, but I can remind myself by a quick outline after I read it, oh, this is what this is about. To do a summary or a small annotation of what's contained in each paragraph is sometimes really helpful. I did this a lot as an undergrad after I started to get bad grades on quizzes in a particular class, and it really helped slow my brain down and focus, and it saved me time because I didn't have to read articles or books or textbooks multiple times. Here, you'll notice that her first sentence, I do not intend to read these events as dances, for they would radically discontextualize their motivation and intent, nor do I intend blah, blah, blah. This is her naysayer paragraph. We'll come back to naysayer paragraphs later in this inquiry, but I just want to make the note here. Lastly, I want you to see that I'm again reacting to her different ideas and her structure. So where I say question paragraph, I'm literally saying, look at this whole paragraph here is all questions. I started highlighting her questions and then realized, oh my gosh, it's a whole question paragraph. And that's why I put this exclamation point. This exclamation point is my reaction to the fact that she has a whole paragraph of questions. It seems like a lot to me. It overwhelmed me. Down here, we see we're getting to the end of the first section of her introduction, right? There's another naysayer idea here, but then you get to her thesis. And again, it's a second thesis statement. It's not necessarily different from what's on the first page, but it's again to remind the reader why she's doing what she's doing. I will endeavor, meaning I will try, to frame a new perspective on individual agency and collective action, one that casts the body in a central role as enabling human beings to work together to create social betterment. Using nonviolent direct action examples, I also hope to contribute to the theoretical discussion of social movements, showing how dance studies is itself a form of social theory. Her thesis is in two parts. The first part, I believe, is most relevant to our inquiry. The second part is her showing why this argument is relevant to dance studies and the discipline at large. I'm not worried about you guys learning that at the moment. Again, I put the T next to it to remind myself to look back because she has a thesis moment here. And then I'm going to assume that she's going to move on. More than a hamburger likely refers to the sit-in protests from the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And that makes sense because going back to this outline paragraph, that is what she tells me she's going to do the first thing. So again, this video is just to help you understand different ways of taking notes, engaging with the text, and making sure you understand what's going on. You do not have to do this for every page, but I would definitely encourage you to take the time with the introduction and the conclusion, as well as dig into at least one or two of her examples to understand where she's going. Thanks for listening.